Since I've taken this fight against cultural Christianity, there have been a couple of things that I've learned. One is that the idea of culture has seeped so deep into the minds of atheists. Two, not all of these cultural Christians are the ones waging war on us. They're not the Jordan Petersons, the Coach Red Pills, the Black Pigeon Speaks. These are just Christians in name only. Secular Christians. And as much as we can rain fire, piss, and vinegar all over the cultural Christians that want war with us, we can't exactly do that to the other set of people. In a recent video made by Nightmare Fuel, titled Rachel Oates versus Anti-Theism, Nightmare Fuel comes out against Rachel Oates, who has admitted that she is not in the camp of anti-theism. And Nightmare Fuel had the correct approach. He wasn't mean to her. He just calmly presented his argument and actually tried to show her some courtesy. Because whether we like it or not, she is willing to point how religion is stupid, but she's not willing to go all the way and just say that religion should just be gone. This presents a problem for one major reason. A lot of what makes anti-theists so entertaining is when we just take the piss out of creationists and flat earthers, and we just call them morons, stupid people, retards, and we get a kick out of it. We can't exactly do that anymore with this new crowd. I mean, the Jordan Petersons, the Black Pigeon Speaks, the Coach Red Pills, I mean, have at it. But the people that don't take up the anti-theist mantle because they feel it would not be kind, we can't exactly take that approach with them. Because if we do, it will only push them away from us. They will then double down on their cultural Christianity, and the cultural Christians will have a better argument to use against us. At least one that appeals more to the emotional side of the human brain. And of course, you've got these people on your YouTube comments or Twitter, whatever social media you have. These people always say something along the lines of this: if religion or God isn't real, then what's the point? Their mind goes 0 to 60 straight to nihilism if proven religion is not real. There's a common theme between these three types of people, and that is that they feel that when you embrace atheism 100%, that it is complete absence. The absence of what, you say? Well, the absence of culture, the absence of morality, the absence of wonder, and even the absence of purpose. And they equate this with a sense of a loss of identity. See, when you pull the Christian weed from the ground, there's always that little seed that if it isn't taken care of, it will grow back into the same weed. And that seed, in this case, is the emotional connection to the culture of Christianity. So if we in the anti-theist community are going to defeat these cultural Christians, we need to acknowledge that there is an emotional connection to culture, and we need to replicate it in order to present an alternative to these atheists that have this emotional connection to Christianity, because then we can neutralize the argument that we are trying to strip their culture and their identity and give them nothing in return. And as much as we can say we're giving them truth and clarity in response to this argument, the truth isn't always positive. The truth doesn't always elicit happiness. Sometimes the truth is sad. The truth is dark and depressing. That is why I am presenting the argument that we need to have a cultural reverence for a different aspect of human history. I am talking about not only the beginning of atheism, but the beginning of Western culture itself. Before the existence of Christianity, there was a society in the Mediterranean called Athens, Greece. It was a society that had the first ever use of democracy in human history. It was also the birthplace of our science, our math, our astronomy, our theater, and our philosophy. See, Greek philosophers were very unique for ancient times. Not all of them were non-believers, but they all agreed to leave the idea of religion, myth, or magic at the door while they pursued their work in answering the questions of life's mysteries. Of course, in a previous video, I mentioned the philosopher Socrates, but upon further examination in my research, I discovered that there were many philosophers that predated Socrates, and a lot of what we take for granted in Western culture actually comes from them. And to list them all would take way too long, but I am going to at least pick a select few that truly blew me away. Two political names that constantly come up in these video discussions of politics on YouTube are John Locke and Thomas Jefferson. John Locke was the creator of the classical liberalism ideology, while Thomas Jefferson, as we know, is one of the founding fathers of America and the person who wrote the Declaration of Independence. Now, of course, John Locke coined the phrase life, liberty, and property, while Thomas Jefferson coined the phrase life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. But did you know that one of their direct influences was a pre-Socratic Greek philosopher named Epicurus? In fact, in a letter to William Short on October 31st, 1819, Thomas Jefferson actually made the statement, "I too am an Epicurean." Epicurus was in fact one of the earliest, if not the earliest, advocate for a sort of separation between religion and the state. Epicurus also discussed the concept of free will. See, Epicurus was a materialist. He believed that the universe was constituted of atoms, and he believed that free will came by chance. Epicurus was also a devotee of Democritus, who created the atomic theory. Atomic theory is the foundation of materialism. Even though Democritus had originally created the concept of atoms, it wasn't until Albert Einstein's work that atoms were proven to exist. Now, if you're a fan of Charles Darwin's work, then you will be extremely impressed by the pre-Socratic philosopher known as Anaximander. Now, Anaximander originally came up with the theory that sea life, like fish, later evolved into land-based life. But where he got it wrong was that fish later evolved into human beings. But then again, there were no chimpanzees in ancient Greece. So Charles Darwin's inevitable discovery that he later coined into his book, The Origin of Species, released in 1859, was only an extension of the theory already presented by Anaximander. There was a pre-Socratic philosopher by the name of Pythagoras. He is mostly famous for the Pythagorean theorem, which is in mathematics, but also he originated the theory that the Earth was round. It was because of the existence of this theory that Christopher Columbus would later try to prove that the world was round by sailing west. And of course, we all know the actual story of what happened with Christopher Columbus and his voyage. But without Pythagoras' original theory that was later carried on by Aristotle, the discovery of America would have never really happened, or at least it would not have been discovered by the Western world, and later settled by the Pilgrims at that specific time. But I think the most fascinating of them all is Thales of Miletus. I probably fucked that up. This is a philosopher that not only discovered the concept of deductive reasoning, but he later described a form of static electricity by rubbing fur on various substances, including amber, and discovered that there was an attraction. This culminated into the discovery known as magnetism. Of course, the two philosophers that get their name mostly mentioned, even in the Christian world, are Plato and Aristotle. This is because they are the earliest endorsers of the concept known as natural law, which matches up to what Christian scholars like to tell the church, and the church likes to tell the congregation. Let me just put it to you this way. Any scientific innovation or discovery past the year 1453, there's an overwhelming chance that it was either already discovered or was being discussed in ancient Greece. So when the ages of the Renaissance and the Age of Enlightenment came along, historical figures that worked in the field of philosophy, science, and politics heavily depended on or were heavily influenced by Greek philosophers. Modern philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche, Ayn Rand, Karl Marx, Voltaire, not to mention two names I've already mentioned, John Locke and Thomas Jefferson. And these are only a few philosophers from the Age of Enlightenment that took direct influence from the Greek philosophers of the past. And that is a very wide array of different political thoughts that we owe to the ancient Greeks. And as much as I do not want to throw a bone to the alt-right, I feel, based on principle, I have to. When they're the ones also spewing this crap that Christianity is somehow responsible for Western culture, I just feel like I have to correct them, because there was an ancient city that was the rival to the city of Athens called the city of Sparta. Sparta, unlike its counterpart Athens, was a military-style fascistic city run by two different kings and a small oligarchy. Spartans were highly nationalistic and, in fact, isolationist. The Spartans' nationalistic idea begins with birth, as the elders investigate whether the infant has any deformities. If they have deformities, they're considered weak and left alone on a hillside to die. Otherwise, they are kept with the parents until 7 years old, until the Spartan military comes to take them away for a rigorous training known as the agoge. At least that's how I believe it's pronounced. Anyway, the agoge is considered one of the most rigorous types of military training in the known world. It pretty much makes Navy SEAL training look like daycare. And it was because of this military training that made the Spartans the legends they are today. But it is also through that training that the Spartans were culturally conditioned to worship the state, because the state of Sparta was everything. And this also created a situation where Spartan women were actually more free than any other society in the ancient world, because the Spartan women were seen as the wives and mothers of soldiers, the most necessary piece to the state. Ironically, in this male-dominated society, women were highly respected because of their role in serving the state. Even, in fact, that women who died during childbirth were given the same burial rights as a Spartan soldier who died in battle. Now again, I despise the alt-right and their views, but one thing I despise more than the alt-right is religion. But this example clearly shows that the one religion of Greece, which was the polytheism of Greek mythology, can spawn two diametrically opposite cultures. It's as if religion didn't have much to do with culture to begin with. So I hope you've all learned a valuable lesson today. When you hear that the Western culture originated with Christianity or that Christianity shaped Western values, then remind them that the Europe or America that they love would not exist without the Greek philosophers. And even people as odious as the alt-right can find a culture in ancient Greece that is synonymous with their views. Now, I know there's a lot to cover here, but I encourage fellow anti-theists watching this video to do their own research. This is a team effort, and I do like to get to other topics, so if you ever have the time, try looking up some pre-Socratic philosophers and learn what contributions they made to the Western culture. But I will make this one point again. All of these philosophers in Greece agreed to put religion, myth, and magic at the door while they did their research. This proves that when religion gets in the way of the mind cannot go past the barriers set by religion. I'm Prometheus the Prophet, signing off.